Justice, fairness, safety, equality. These are all pillars of a true democracy and can be achieved through a healthy and independent court system. The judicial branch is one of 3 branches of government as established in the United States Constitution: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch.
Going all the way back to the early days of our republic, the judicial branch has taken on the role of being the interpreter and the arbiter of the law.
Justice for all means fairness, the ability of all people to seek justice. It doesn't always mean you're going to win. When people come to court, sometimes they expect they'll win their case, but it's really about fairness. It's about having the ability to be heard and to get a just result.
The constitutions of the United States and Ohio call for the separation of powers, meaning each branch has its own duties and responsibilities independent of one another. But they are all equal and ensure that no one branch has more power than the others. The judicial branch interprets the laws created by the 2 other branches and enforces those laws impartially and fairly. This is known as judicial independence.
You have to be able to do this job in such a way so that you can do it on the basis of the facts and the law that are presented, with no other real consideration. You have to be able to disconnect from your own personal biases to the degree that that is ever possible, and to bring only to the table what you've been trained to do, which is to look at the facts and apply the law to those facts in order to come to what you consider in your best judgment to be a fair and just result.
Laws are in place to protect the country and its people from traffic violations to serious crimes. But without the courts and those working within the legal system, we would have laws, but no way to enforce them.
Society without the judicial branch would be bedlam. The judicial branch helps keep the order. The various branches of government have their functions, and without the judicial branch protecting the application of the laws, there would be no order.
That's why the judicial branch is so important to the citizens. The judicial branch is the only branch that can take away your freedom, your children, even your life, or can decide how much you will pay financially to right a wrong. The American legal system can be traced all the way back to 1215 and the Magna Carta, which promised liberties, protections, and justice for British citizens. It's often considered the inspiration for the United States Constitution and is one of the first documents to protect the common man from the overreaching power of government. Today's American justice system is a complex network of law enforcement, lawyers, and courts that strive to protect all citizens. The judicial branch provides a pathway to justice for litigants and defendants. In criminal cases, it guarantees access to an attorney. It assumes someone to be innocent until proven guilty. It provides the accused with a jury of their peers, and it provides a forum to resolve disputes. Through the centuries, the American judicial branch has always strived for fairness, balance, and justice. Fairness, balance, and justice cannot be achieved in the American court system without the cooperation of our citizens and judicial stakeholders. There are many moving parts to the American justice system. Police officers enforce laws and investigate allegations of wrongdoing. If it's determined that a crime may have been committed, a prosecutor's office decides whether or not to pursue a case farther. They can take the facts to a grand jury to determine if formal charges should be filed, known as an indictment. If an indictment is filed, the case proceeds into the courts. Judges preside over all kinds of cases. They make sure procedures are followed correctly and fairly. A civil case is one in which monetary damages are being sought against a person or organization, known as the defendant, and the party or person making the claim is the plaintiff. In a criminal matter, the state brings the case against a defendant. If a case goes to trial, the public plays a critical role. A witness is someone who saw or knows something crucial to the case. Witnesses are sworn in under oath, and their testimony is legally binding as being wholly true and accurate. But perhaps the strongest pillar of democracy within the American judicial branch is the assembly of a jury of one's peers. In some cases, jurors are chosen to hear all the evidence and arguments and will decide the defendant's guilt or innocence. Jurors are chosen randomly and then screened by both the plaintiff's and defendant's attorneys to ensure their ability to be impartial, a process called voir dire. Some trials can last hours, while some can take days, weeks, or even months. But some cases never make it to trial, and both parties reach an agreement before a trial begins. But the courts are much more than judges and trial attorneys. Courts are staffed by administrators, court reporters who take down what's said in a trial, bailiffs and staff attorneys who keep the dockets moving, probation officers who monitor people on community control, and many others. Every court employee plays a critical role. It's the involvement of everyone within the judicial branch, including our citizens, who provide the bedrock of fair and impartial justice. The judicial branch is one branch of government, but many different courts within the judicial system handle various types of cases. Let's take a closer look at the different courts. In Ohio, judges are elected to 6-year terms. Municipal courts hear misdemeanor criminal cases that could result in 6 months or less in jail. Domestic violence, DUI cases, and traffic violations are also heard in municipal court. If a civil case is less than $15,000, Ohio's municipal courts will usually hear those cases. In Ohio, some municipal courts also have small claims courts that handle civil cases between two parties where the dispute is less than $6,000 and a jury is not required. Cases are decided quickly with minimal expense, often with no attorney involvement. Some towns and cities also have mayor's courts. An appointed civil officer who administers the law, known as a magistrate, primarily handles traffic violations here. Ohio's common pleas courts can have 4 divisions: general, juvenile, probate, and domestic relations, and hear both civil and criminal cases. Civil cases in which claims exceed $15,000 are filed in the common pleas courts. All felonies are heard in the common pleas courts. Felonies rank in level of seriousness from 5, which are the lowest, to 1, which are the most serious offenses. Some extremely serious cases, including certain murders and capital crimes, are unclassified. Defendants in criminal cases who are found guilty, or either party in civil cases, have the right to appeal if they believe an error was made by a lower court. State appeals courts review the civil and criminal judgment of common pleas, municipal, and county courts. There are 12 appellate courts in the state of Ohio in which claims of error are reviewed by a 3-judge panel. Death penalty cases are automatically appealed to the Ohio Supreme Court. If a defendant is acquitted or found not guilty in a criminal case, the state cannot file an appeal. Once someone is acquitted of a crime, he or she cannot be tried again for that same crime, a protection called double jeopardy. The state Supreme Court is the court of last resort on state constitutional questions and legal appeals. The Supreme Court of Ohio has 1 Chief Justice and 6 Associate Justices. Most cases come from the appellate courts and Court of Claims, which hears lawsuits brought against the state. The Ohio Supreme Court primarily decides constitutional questions, cases involving questions of public or general interest, and all criminal appeals where the death penalty has been imposed. The justices also decide if they will hear other criminal and civil appeals. Crimes can be prosecuted under either state criminal law or federal criminal law. Some crimes fall under federal criminal law only. Cases such as tax evasion, identity theft, illegal acts that cross state lines, maritime law, hate crimes, or terrorism can only be prosecuted in the federal court system. The federal courts also hear civil cases in which the parties are in different states. All federal judges are appointed by the President of the United States and are confirmed by the U.S. Senate. These are lifetime appointments, and judges can only be removed through an impeachment process initiated by Congress and only under outstanding circumstances. There are 94 U.S. district courts that hear both federal criminal and federal civil cases. District courts are sometimes called the federal trial courts. Each of the 94 U.S. district courts fall within 12 regions of the country, each with its own federal appeals court. Appeals from a district court would proceed to one of those 12 federal appeals courts. The Northern District of Ohio is in the 6th District Court of Appeals. The federal appeals courts each consist of 3 judges, no jury, and can only determine whether or not the law was applied correctly by the district court. A 13th federal appeals court was created to hear appeals on patent law and international trade law cases. And finally, at the very top of the judicial branch is the United States Supreme Court. 9 judges sit on the U.S. Supreme Court at any one time, 1 Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices. The U.S. Supreme Court is the highest court in the country and is the final interpreter of federal constitutional law. In all, the judicial branch consists of numerous courts that handle specific types of cases and a mission to achieve justice for all. The Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court's General Division is housed in the Court Tower of the Justice Center, a landmark group of buildings in downtown Cleveland. The General Division's goals are clear. The mission of the court is to provide a forum for the fair, impartial, and timely resolution of civil and criminal cases. In Cuyahoga County, there are 4 divisions within the Court of Common Pleas. In some Ohio counties, there are fewer separate divisions. In Ohio, some cases are heard by magistrates who are civil officers appointed by the court. The General Division of the Common Pleas Court hears both civil and criminal cases.
The difference between a criminal case and a civil case is a civil case is a dispute between 2 parties, and it involves an individual filing a civil complaint against another individual corporation and tries to seek a remedy through the court. It is a private dispute between 2 parties. A criminal case, on the other hand, is the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. We represent the state of Ohio. On behalf of the state of Ohio, we bring a charge that exposes somebody to potential criminal penalties, including fines and incarcerations.
On a criminal case, how they find themselves in our courts, in the General Division Common Pleas Court, we are a felony court. How does it come to me and then appear in front of us in our arraignment room? Now that process, if you start at the very beginning, comes with an investigation or a police officer who starts their work. They then decide to charge the case. They present that case to a prosecutor who then will take the facts of that case and present them to the grand jury. The grand jury decides if there's a violation of whatever the code that has been put in place by our legislature. If the grand jury believes there's probable cause, then they indict the case. At that time, the case is indicted. It will appear for the first time in our General Division court here in the Court of Common Pleas, and they will appear in front of our arraignment judge. And at that time, if a lawyer has been retained, that lawyer would appear with their client, and if the lawyer is not retained and the individual before us needs a lawyer because of their inability to pay, we'll appoint a lawyer or a public defender. At that time, a bond is set, a judge is assigned, and at that point it then goes to one of our judges on our bench, and then the process continues in either resolve through dismissal, plea bargain, trial.
The Juvenile Division of the Common Pleas Court hears primarily delinquency cases involving minors or someone younger than 18 years old. It also hears cases of abuse or neglect, dependency, and paternity cases. The Probate Division hears all cases of adoption, guardianship appointments, eminent domain, and cases that involve estates, wills, and trusts. Probate judges also have the power to appoint people to certain boards, like the Cleveland Metro Parks. And finally, the Domestic Relations Division hears cases of divorce, dissolution of marriage, child custody, and spousal support. It's important to know that domestic relations does not hear cases of domestic abuse, but can issue family-related protection orders. Domestic violence cases can be heard in municipal courts or in the Common Pleas General Division.
In the General Division, where I sit as a judge, we have a number of specialty courts. Specialty courts have been created not only here in Ohio, but throughout the United States to deal specifically with issues that judges can concentrate on in trying to deal with the violation before them. Drug court is one example. Recovery court is the second one in that. We have a veterans court. We have a mental health docket. Those are in my general court. They have them in domestic court. They have them in juvenile court. And I think our trend in the United States is moving towards specialty courts so we can deal with a specific population and have educated ourselves as judges on that specific population.
Judges in Ohio are elected to the bench by the people, and they serve 6-year terms. To be on the ballot, judges must be licensed attorneys, having practiced law for at least 6 years. Often, they must win a party-affiliated primary election before getting on the ballot in a nonpartisan general election. If a judge leaves office during his or her term, a replacement is appointed by Ohio's governor. Unlike the other 2 branches of government, members of the judiciary are required to receive training and ongoing education. The judiciary is held to the highest ethical standard where even the perception of impropriety is not allowed.
The role of an attorney is enormous. And whether it's a civil or a criminal case, the protection of the client is paramount within the guidelines of the Code of Professional Conduct. And he or she must expend every effort to make sure that in a criminal case, they receive the full protection of their constitutional guarantees, and in a civil case, that all relevant discovery has been pursued, that all investigation has been pursued, and that the interest of the client, whether he or she is a plaintiff or a defendant, receives the entire representation that is necessary in a case. Most attorneys with whom I've been associated do it because of a sense of responsibility, not only to the client but to the community at large, that this is how they can contribute to the community best. And I think that that's that professional commitment.
In Cuyahoga County, the Court of Common Pleas is the main trial court. With 34 judges and approximately 1.2 million people living in Cuyahoga County, the court handles tens of thousands of cases every year. Despite the volume and demands placed on the docket, the Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court mission remains clear.
Most people just want to be heard. They just want to know that when they walk in the door, at the end of the day, whether they win or lose, they were fairly heard and that the law was applied appropriately and evenly to them.
It's the judicial system that allows the community to feel that without having to come to blows, without having to take matters into their own hand, that they can actually get a just resolution to any kind of conflict.
There isn't any person excluded from the opportunity to come into the justice system and have a wrong right or have someone who has an injustice, have that injustice corrected. So anybody could walk into our justice system and have an opportunity to have our branch of government work through their issues.